Welcome to Six Count. I'm your host, Xara Wilde, bringing you the jazz and swing scene from the Capital Region. Joe, thank you so much for speaking with me.
It's a pleasure to be with you here today.
Yes.
In this portico here out of the rain.
We are sitting on church steps because Lark Street can be a bit noisy. But I do appreciate you talking about your career with me today. I know you from Speakeasy 518 in downtown Albany, and you were sharing with me earlier that you used to play solo, but now you play with some other guys. Can you share a little bit about what your band looks like now?
Yeah, the schedule now is on the first Saturday of every month. I play at Speakeasy with a trio. And it's different configurations. Sometimes it'll be guitar, bass, and drums, and sometimes it'll be guitar, organ, and drums. And the last couple times it was guitar, keyboard, and bass. So it's different.
And how might you describe the kind of jazz that you do?
My style has been characterized as a post-bebop style. So Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie were the kings of the bebop era. This would go back into the 1940s. The music that came after, that's the type of music we play.
Who would you say have most influenced you as a jazz musician?
Well, certainly the other guitar players. I grew up listening to George Benson, Pat Martino, Kenny Burrell, Joe Pass. Those are probably the big four that I always harken back to. And to this day, I started playing the guitar before I was 10, and I still hear their music coming out from under my fingers almost every day. Wes Montgomery's another big one.
I think some might say that the guitar seems to indicate the style of the music that you're going to do, but on the other hand, you might argue that the guitar is an instrument in which all sorts of expression is possible. So where would you lie on that spectrum?
Well, I agree. It's a very idiosyncratic instrument. It's an instrument that has sort of a split personality because it's a folk instrument, and it's also an instrument that serious scholars and composers are interested in. So you have that dichotomy. And I don't know. I guess I started with piano lessons and then shifted to guitar when I was like 9. So.
Well, that's interesting. And do you teach now?
Yes. I started teaching guitar when I was probably 11 years old.
Wow, so you got interested and then very quickly were learning and teaching.
Well, what happened was something called the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show on television in those days. And this was the biggest thing anybody had ever heard of. And before that, there was Elvis Presley who played the guitar. And then when the Beatles came out, a whole new generation of people wanted to buy guitars. So they sold a lot of guitars that year, or for those few years. And of course, nobody knew how to play them. So I was teaching the other kids in the neighborhood how to play these little chords on the guitar that they could, then they could fake their way through a Beatles song.
Is that what they all would ask? I want to learn this song.
Yeah, that was a big thing in those days. And you know, the Beatles are still very popular today, but it's hard for people to believe the craze and the pandemonium that these people created. They were so popular that people were just going nuts with these guys. And it was called Beatlemania.
Yeah.
And I was already playing the guitar at that point, so that helped me as an instructor to establish myself with students.
And was there a point where you wanted to transition away from the Beatles and get more serious about jazz, or is it something that is kind of fun on the side?
Well, I guess I grew up, I was listening to my father's record collection. As a young man, he had worked as a radio announcer in Connecticut, and he had a music show, and he would play records and talk about the records. And then he would also appropriate all these records that the radio station was done with. So he had lots of records.
That sounds like a great setup.
And that's what I grew up listening to. And there were things like the singers that were popular, like Nat Cole had a guitar player named Oscar Moore that I listened to, probably in utero. There was music in the house before I was born, obviously. Then there was also a piano in the house, which he played. He taught me to play the piano a little bit. But I guess the Beatles, I was already sort of into jazz as a listener. I first graduated from college, I had a music degree, But I knew I didn't want to get a master's and get a New York State teaching certificate and go teach at the local high school or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So I just went on the road with different bands, and I traveled the country for about 10 years.
Wow.
Which was, it's a lot of fun when you're in your 20s. It's not bad at all when you're single. But then I met my wife, and I said, well, maybe I don't want to travel all the time.
Did she have a similar opinion?
And then we relocated back here to upstate New York, which is where I grew up. And I just began to concentrate on local performances and my private teaching practice. And that's very satisfying to me. I'm perfectly happy with it. People that travel all the time, there's no denying it. It takes a toll on your personal life. Mm-hmm. It's hard to keep a marriage going when one person is away all the time, and it can't be denied. So I'm still married, and I'm still very happy with my musical endeavors. Mm-hmm. But there's so many different roads that musicians take, and mine was, I traveled a lot for a while, but I knew I didn't want to do that forever. There are people who do, but I didn't really want to do that.
And as you were speaking to, it sounds like you don't have to go elsewhere to have a pretty busy schedule and have events to go to and different jobs.
Yeah, there are a lot of good opportunities to play in this area, and there are a lot of opportunities there are a lot of great players, and there are a lot of people that you can record with and this sort of thing. So I've been very, very satisfied being here in the Albany, New York area over the years.
And when you traveled in your 20s, where all did you go? And was that the last time where you dedicated a big portion of your life to traveling, or have you done it since?
Well, in those days, there were a lot of hotels and resorts that had music 6 nights a week, 5 nights a week, that sort of thing. So you were playing 5 and 6 nights a week.
Wow.
Which is a lot of playing. And typically you would play in a hotel for 2, 3, 4 weeks, or maybe there'd be an extended stay of 9, 10, 11, 12 weeks.
That makes me think of Some Like It Hot with Marilyn Monroe.
And I traveled throughout the United States and Canada in a wide variety of situations, not just resorts and hotels. I played every conceivable situation, concerts, clubs, cruise ships, everything. And though, one of the things that dawned on me was, I wasn't getting any closer to my jazz aspirations, even though I was working and supporting myself and playing a lot. I wasn't really, getting any closer to the jazz ideal that I had in my mind as a goal.
And what was that ideal like?
To record and play concerts and clubs and that sort of, and just to concentrate on the jazz style rather than the somewhat more commercial styles of music that you are playing when you're in a resort or hotel situation.
Something more focused and personalized for you.
Yeah. So that's why I was really glad to finally make the big switch from playing in that type of a setting, and giving up, all those nights of playing are very valuable. They turn you into a great player.
To be resilient enough to do it.
Yeah,
every
they
night.
bring your playing up to a very high level, but it's not the best music in the world. So, and it wasn't really what I had my heart set on doing. So, by the time I was in my early 30s, I was pretty much done with that. And then I was back here just playing around the area and then that sort of thing.
Okay. And who else in the Capital Region do you frequently play with or are influenced by, record with?
Well, I play. There's an organ player on this album called John Leroy. I played with him a lot over the last, say, 5 or 6 years. And he is a wonderful player. And I grew up listening to these guitar, organ, and drums records. And a lot of guitar players did that. Now, I always said to myself, someday I'm going to meet an organ player who's going to be terrific. And I'm going to play with him, and I'm going to record with him, and it's going to be great. And so I finally did. And so he's one person that I really like to play with. There's another fellow named Mike Benedict who plays the drums and the vibes, and I've played with him a lot over the years. He's been very instrumental in bringing guest artists into the Albany area.
Who are some notable
Ralph
ones?
LaLama, Gary Smullian, Joe Locke. It's a long list. He's really done the area a great service by bringing people like that into the area. So I'm very happy to be able to play with him from time to time. I'm also playing in a big band that's led by Phil Allen that Michael Benedict is part of. And we play in different concert settings around the area. We have a concert at a Place for Jazz this coming November.
Oh, great.
So I'm really looking forward to that. That'll be fun.
I actually spoke with Tim Coakley last week.
Well, Tim is one of the godfathers of this area when it comes to jazz. His jazz show has been on the air for 30 years. Maybe he mentioned it to you. I'm
Yes,
guessing about 30 years.
WAMC.
And he's just wonderful. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of jazz. His personal history and his recollections and storytelling is just amazing.
I agree.
And yeah, I just saw him last week because we played a concert in Schenectady and he was there.
Okay.
So he's one of the pillars of the jazz community, and he was very nice to have me on the show a couple of months ago when the CD was released. We spoke about it for a while, played a couple of tracks, and I think he's the greatest.
We'll be right back with Six Count. I'm your host, Xara Wilde. Stay with us. We'd like to thank Giants of Jazz Radio, based in Lancashire, England, for airing this show. The station brings you the best in classic jazz, playing tracks from the 1940s through the 70s. You can support the station by visiting their website at giantsofjazzradio.co.uk and clicking Donate. And now, back to the show.
Now, do you like playing in bigger bands, or do you like the smaller band feel, or it depends on the mood?
Well, I love them for different reasons. I love playing solo guitar because I can go anywhere with a solo arrangement. I can change the meter, the style. I can play a medley and go into another song. And you could never do this with another musician because they would look at you funny and like, what in the world are you doing?
Right.
You can't do that. And I also like playing trios because the guitar plays all the melodies and does all the improvisation, the solos and that sort of thing. So you have a lot of room to stretch out as a soloist in that context. And then I just dearly love playing in a big band because just the sheer power of the sound when you hear all that brass, it's just amazing. And so I wouldn't want to have to pick one.
Well, that's probably not fair to make you choose.
No, it's just there are three things that I just love very much that I'm very passionate about, and I wouldn't want to have to do without any of them.
Would you say that there are a lot of moments where you still feel like the music takes over everything and it's almost like a transcendental kind of experience?
Yeah, you get carried away with it a little bit, especially in performance, I'd say. It's almost like I'm channeling something. It doesn't happen every time, not even every other time, but when it happens, it's magic. It's like where's this coming from? It's just wow. And that's really what you're hoping for eventually, or at some point. It'll be somewhat transcendent, and you'll be taking everything you've listened to in your whole life, and it'll come out in a different way. And that's the spirit of creativity, spontaneity. And that's the heart of improvisation. Right. That's the imperative of improvisation, is to be fresh and new, and you don't want to play something anybody else has ever played. It's got to be something that's your own. Well, it's one of the things that we do, that students always do. I encourage them to do it. Is you copy other musicians. Okay, mm-hmm. You listen to them very, very closely. And then you learn how to play it exactly like they did. But once you digest all that stuff and assimilate it, then you can really create.
It gives you a repertoire from which you can then create other forms of expression, it sounds.
Sure. The repertoire is very broad. There's just tons and tons of it. Like I said, you won't live long enough to even hear it all. There is just so much of it. So you do have to be somewhat of a specialist and, have some stylistic focus. And in my case, I have a certain style that I'm comfortable with and that I'm somewhat known for, I guess. I don't know. You'll get the idea when you hear the album.
Yeah, well, I look forward to hearing more. Joe, thank you so much for talking to me.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Six Count. I'm your host, Xara Wilde, and that was Joe Finn. This show is listener supported. If you're interested in contributing to the project, you can find the link to our donations page on our website at sixcount.simplecast.com. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can let me know what you thought of the episode or who I should speak to next by emailing me. I'm at sixcountpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter at sixcountpodcast.